Let's talk about respiration. So, first thing first, what is respiration? So, respiration is basically the release of energy from the food that we eat. All right. So, you have eaten your food, but then you need to get energy from that food that you've eaten. So, that energy that is going to be released from the food that you eat is what we call respiration. So, this one is basically tissue respiration, also known as cellular respiration, because what will happen is when you get to breathe in, right, you are going to have oxygen going in and carbon dioxide coming out. So the oxygen is going to go in the lungs, and there in the lungs it is going to be transported and go into the body, and then when it goes to the rest of the body to be carried in blood. So if it goes in the rest of the body, what will happen is that now there's going to be exchange when it goes to cells in our body. It is going to be moving from blood to the cells. Carbon dioxide will be moving from the cells to the blood. So that is known as a cellular respiration because there is an exchange at the cellular level, also known as internal respiration. Okay. So respiration sometimes can apply to other processes that will be able to make oxygen available to living organisms. Any process that will bring oxygen to us, for example, we have got what we call breathing, also known as ventilation. So, ventilation or breathing is basically getting to bring air into the body and remove air from the body. And what do you want to remove? You want to remove carbon dioxide, you want to take in oxygen. That is what we call ventilation or breathing, and it is known as external respiration. So, what is the difference between internal respiration and external respiration? External respiration is going to be happening just at the point when oxygen and carbon dioxide are entering and leaving the body via the nose or the lungs. But internal respiration has to do now with oxygen being taken into the cells, carbon dioxide being removed from the cells. Okay, so that is it. Now, internal respiration that involves the cells can be divided into aerobic and anaerobic. External respiration can involves breathing and gaseous exchange. So breathing, this is where you the nose and the mouth is concerned. Air is going in and air is leaving. Gaseous exchange will happen in the lungs, where carbon dioxide is leaving blood coming into the lungs, and then oxygen is leaving the lungs going into the blood. Okay, but in internal respiration, aerobic respiration is the kind of respiration that depends on oxygen, and then anaerobic, an, that is meaning no, aerobic is the oxygen, so this one involves no oxygen. So when you are breathing and then you don't have enough oxygen, this can be applied in two processes. There is what we call alcoholic fermentation and lactic fermentation. So what happens is, think of a person that is running, and then because they are running so fast, they run out of air. So what will happen is that the body will start making lactic acid because there is not enough oxygen. Okay, we'll describe all these processes much more. So starting with internal respiration. Internal respiration is going to occur inside living cells in organelles, and it happens in what we call the mitochondria. So it's actually in the mitochondria where energy is made in the body. So that's why internal respiration is happening in the mitochondria. Remember, oxygen was carried from the lungs, it went in blood, and it went to the rest of the body. And then oxygen started moving from the blood going into the cells. So that is internal respiration because it involves blood and cells. And when oxygen moved into the cells, it will go now into the mitochondria to make energy there. And the main substrate for internal respiration, what we use to make energy in the body, is glucose. And there are going to be two types of respiration, the aerobic and anaerobic. So we can make energy from glucose using oxygen or without oxygen. That's the meaning. So starting with aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is the release of energy from the food in living cells with what? With oxygen. Okay, with oxygen. And when you are using oxygen, you are going to release a lot of energy than when you are not using oxygen. But then energy is not going to be the only product. You are also going to have carbon dioxide being produced and water. And this respiration is going to occur in tissue of cells and of animals and plants when there is enough oxygen supply. So you need to know this equation for aerobic respiration. When you react glucose with oxygen, you are going to produce carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Make sure that you know it. Okay. So this is the chemical equation here for the same equation which is on top. The symbol for glucose is C6H12O6. And then you are reacting with the oxygen, but you are getting 6 oxygen molecules to produce carbon dioxide and water. So this 6 you can see in front is just balancing the equation. So glucose plus oxygen produces carbon dioxide plus water plus energy. Make sure that you know also the chemical equation apart from the word equation. We also have anaerobic respiration. This is the kind of respiration that happens without oxygen, in the absence of oxygen. And this one includes the fermentation, alcoholic fermentation, and lactic fermentation. Okay, so what is alcoholic fermentation? This is the release of energy from the food substances in living cells in the absence of oxygen. And what do we produce? We produce alcohol. Specifically, we have got different alcohols. We'll talk about this in organic chemistry. Okay, we have got methanol, ethanol, butanol, all those are alcohols, but the specific alcohol that you produce here is ethanol and carbon dioxide. So take note, if you don't have oxygen, you can form carbon dioxide, alcohol, all right? These are going to be the many products. So this is the weight equation that you can see. But then before then, you need to know that in comparison to aerobic respiration, anaerobic respiration, the energy that is going to be produced is going to be small. And there is an enzyme that will catalyze the reaction. Remember, enzymes speed up the reaction while they are not changed. So in alcoholic fermentation, the enzyme is known as zymase. Okay, if you've seen people who make cachasu, so this enzyme is going to be used. So what happens that glucose, you can see there's no oxygen now, is going to be catalyzed by zymase, and you're going to produce carbon dioxide, alcohol, and energy. But energy is little. The chemical equation is going to be this one: H6 C6H12O6. This is glucose in the presence of zymase producing carbon dioxide plus the alcohol. Now this alcohol is ethanol. Ethanol has got two carbons, so that is C2H5OH. Let me just show how do you tell that this is an alcohol. Alright, so when you want to tell that a compound is an alcohol, there is a formula that they are supposed to meet. Let me just write that formula. So the formula for alcohols is C N H 2N plus 1 and then OH. We'll learn this in organic chemistry because you have to know in chemistry. So this is the formula for alcohols. When you have got an alcohol with only one carbon, we call that, we'll put meth in front. But alcohols are supposed to end in O. So if you write meth, put O at the end. Okay. Alcohols end in O, so it's supposed to be methano. Methano. And then two carbons, the letters that come in front is eth. So it becomes ethano. Three carbons is propano. Four carbons is butano, up to 10, but we'll look at that more in chemistry. So because we said that the alcohol that is produced here is ethanol, that is two carbons. So where there is N, you are going to put 2. So that becomes C2H. This is going to be 2 times 2 plus 1, that is 5. And then OH. So this is the formula that you can see here. C2H5OH. And then plus energy. So that is for alcoholic fermentation. Don't forget the enzyme zymase. Okay. And then the other type, just a moment. All right. Now just some application. Alcoholic fermentation is going to be important in baking and also brewing, the making of beer. So in these two reactions, baking and also the making of beer, the organism that is going to be used to carry out alcoholic fermentation. So what happens here is that you are going to, for example, in the making of beer in brewing, you are going to have a germinating seed. Mostly they use maize because maize contains maltose. Okay, maltose. So what will happen is that this seed is going to be dried like the dried maize and ground to form a powder. So we're going to be able to break it, to grind it to form a powder. The powder is going to be boiled to in water to form something like a paste, like porridge. And then the paste is going to be cooled and the yeast is going to be added. This yeast contains the enzyme zymase. So zymase will now convert glucose to carbon dioxide, alcohol, and release energy. Okay. And then where is the glucose coming from? Because we are saying that in the reaction for fermentation we use glucose. So glucose is coming from maltose, because when you break maltose, you are going to get two glucose molecules, glucose plus glucose, because maltose is made up of two glucose molecules. So that is what is going to happen. The alcohol that you form is then going to be removed from the mixture by simple distillation. Don't forget the separation techniques that we did, right? And that will be the same when baking. Flour is going to be mixed with water, salt, and sugar, and then yeast is going to be added to form a paste which is known as a dough. When there is not enough oxygen, zymase, which is found in the yeast here, will act on sugar to form carbon dioxide and alcohol. If oxygen is sufficient, yeast carries out aerobic respiration. The carbon dioxide begins to form bubbles, okay, in the dough, and that will cause it to rise. So what causes the dough to rise when you are baking is actually the carbon dioxide. So this is what happens here. And then lactic fermentation. Lactic fermentation is where you are releasing energy from the food in the living organism without oxygen, but then you are not producing alcohol, you are producing what we call lactic acid. as the only product. Okay, and the amount of energy released is very little. So look at this, you have got glucose producing lactic acid and energy. The chemical equation is here. This is glucose C6H12O6. This is lactic acid C3H6O3. Okay, and it's actually the same. Anyway, don't worry about that. So this is lactic acid, and then you've produced just a little energy. You can see there is no carbon dioxide being produced here. And it is important for you to understand where you use this reaction. This is going to take place in muscles. So when you're exercising, what happens is that when you're exercising, you need extra energy for you to be able to carry out your exercise. Okay. But then as you exercise, you'll not be able to take in enough oxygen because you are breathing very fast. And so you are not going to have enough oxygen in the body. So you have got limited supply of oxygen. But then you need energy to generate, you need oxygen to generate energy. So what happens if you don't have enough oxygen? The body will start to make energy without oxygen. And in the process, as you are making that energy, you are producing lactic acid. Okay, lactic acid. And lactic acid that is being formed is harmful to the body. It has got harmful effects. And lactic acid will cause fatigue. That's why you get to feel tired as you are getting to exercise. And you're also going to have muscle cramps, like you are having cramps in muscles and fainting. So these three things: tiredness, muscle cramps, and fainting. So blood which is flowing through the muscles will be able to carry that lactic acid that has been produced, and the lactic acid is going to be taken to the brain. When the brain sees that there is lactic acid, it will then tell the rib cage, okay, to increase the breathing rate. That is why we start now breathing very deep. So we start breathing like that because the brain has communicated. And the information from the brain will also go to the heart so that the heart can start beating very fast. That's why you are going to have the heart beating very fast, boom, 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 like that. So this increases oxygen supply. The way you started breathing very fast and the heart is beating very fast, that will increase oxygen supply to the muscle. And the oxygen is needed to break. So you remember you have formed lactic acid, right? So you need oxygen to break down this lactic acid that you have formed. That's why we have even increased the production of oxygen, or the usage of oxygen. So lactic acid is going to be broken down to water and carbon dioxide. Okay. So we are saying when you have got oxygen, that oxygen is going to be used to break down this lactic acid to water and the carbon dioxide. Now the total amount of oxygen which is needed to break down lactic acid, which is produced in the muscle, is known as oxygen date. Make sure that you know this term. What is oxygen date? Simply the total amount of oxygen that is required to break down the lactic acid which was produced in the muscles. Okay, so when we are talking about the production of energy in our bodies, the currency for energy in the body is ATP. For example, you know that you're supposed to buy something, right? But you don't go with a chair to say I've come to buy millimil, or I've come with a phone. Here is a phone, I want millimil. No, you use money because that is the currency that is understood by everyone. So same with energy. The form of energy understood in the body, or the energy currency, is ATP. Okay. So ATP is very important. Energy from respiration is not going to be used direct by organisms, but is going to be used to produce what we call ATP. This is adenosine triphosphate. And how do you form ATP? You get adenosine diphosphate, ADP. You react it with one phosphate. This is, you can see it is written as Pi, so this is an inorganic phosphate. So you get ADP and a phosphate, then you are going to produce ATP. Okay, you can see that energy that you had produced, you are using it to form ATP. Now ATP can be used by the body. How? When you get to break now, because ATP, you are going to have a phosphate, a phosphate, a phosphate, three phosphates. That is adenosine. So this is attached to adenine. So adenosine triphosphate. So what will happen is now you are going to be able to break this one bond here. When you break this one bond, you now release energy, and then you are going to get back adenosine diphosphate. Di means you have got two phosphates and then one phosphate here, which is there. So that is what happens. So ATP is very important in that it makes it possible for energy to be stored and transported in the body, and it also makes energy available when and where it is needed to be able to do the function. So that is the function of ATP. Okay, so this is just an experiment to demonstrate how respiration happens in seeds which are germinating. So you can see we get boiled seed. This is seed that has been boiled, and then we have got a flask, and then a thermometer on top, some cotton wool to prevent anything from coming out here. Okay, so what happens is that you are going to read the initial temperature from these two guys. In one container you have got a seed that has been boiled, meaning that this seed, because it has been boiled, it can't undergo respiration. And then this seed is germinating, meaning it can undergo respiration. So what you do is that you first read the temperature when you initially had to put these guys in these containers, the boiled seed and the germinating seed. And then you are going to leave this experiment for 4 days, and then you come later to read. Okay, you come later to read the temperature. So later on you are going to see that if the flask contains boiled seed, the temperature will remain, it will not change. While this one which contains a germinating seed, the temperature is going to increase. And why is the temperature increasing? Because energy is produced during respiration. Germinating seeds carry out respiration, while boiled seeds are dead. They can't carry out respiration, so they can't produce any energy, because respiration only happens in living organisms. Okay, so that is one experiment that can be done. You can as well get to look at these other experiments which are happening. Let's look at this experiment for carbon dioxide. Okay, so here what you have is you have got three containers. Container A, it has got lime water. Container B has got a small mammal like a rat. Container C also has got lime water. Okay, so then you want to see what is going to happen to the lime water. So because this rat is actually breathing, the rat is producing carbon dioxide. And what you see is that the lime water in container C will turn milky earlier than the lime water in container A. Okay. And why is that? Exhaled air contains more carbon dioxide than inhaled air. That is why the lime water in C turns milky early than in A. Okay. So in C it will turn milky because we are producing carbon dioxide, and it's actually doing that area because this mammal is breathing more, is breathing from this side air, and then it is releasing air this side. Okay. Now, of importance is, why is respiration important? So respiration is important because the energy released during respiration is going to be used to maintain constant body temperature. Because if your temperature changes very much, it can lead to death. It's that serious. So apart from you maintaining the constant body temperature, you need energy for reproduction, for cell division, and for active transport. So you want to transport things in the body. Remember, we did discuss active transport from a region of low concentration to a region of high concentration. So you need energy to go against concentration gradient. You also need energy for growth. Okay. You also need energy to make big molecules, macromolecules. Right. So breathing in some animals which we call terrestrial animals, such as human beings, is going to be defined as a movement of air into and out of the lungs. But in aquatic animals, animals that live in water, like fish, breathing is the movement of water into and out of the gill chamber. Okay, another term is ventilation. Now, ventilation is just the exchange of air. So air is going in, air is going out. That is ventilation. So in us as humans, we take in oxygen, we take in air and remove air. But then fish do their respiration by using water. They'll take in water, the water is exchanged and then back like that. And breathing involves two steps. There is inhalation or inspiration, breathing in, expiration or exhalation, breathing out. Gaseous exchange is going to be the diffusion of oxygen into the blood and carbon dioxide out. So think of, here is a human being. This is the windpipe or the trachea. The trachea goes like this. At the end of the trachea, you are going to have what we call the air sac. This is where gaseous exchange happens. And then you are going to have blood vessels here. So in blood, you have got carbon dioxide, a lot of carbon dioxide, the blood going to the lungs. While when you breathe in, you have got a lot of oxygen. So this oxygen will be able to move into blood so that it can go to the rest of the body to be used. Carbon dioxide will move into the lungs so that it can be breathed out. Okay? So that is what we call as gaseous exchange. And gaseous exchange happens in the alveolar. This is known as the alveolar. The other term is air sac. Right. So gaseous exchange, we have said, happens in the alveolar. What are the characteristics that makes gaseous exchange possible? Okay. We have got large surface area. So there is a large surface area in the alveolar, and that is to maximize the exchange of gases. So if you see, you are going to have a lot of alveolar and they look like this. They are not like this. They look like this. So all these things that they are forming is just to increase surface area so that a lot of oxygen can actually be taken into the blood. The lot of carbon dioxide can be removed. Another thing is that the alveolar is moist. It has got some bit of water. And the importance of that is gases should be able to dissolve in the moisture. You need to know these characteristics and why the characteristic is important. The alveolar is also thin. What is the importance of being thin? So that gases can be able to pass. Imagine if this alveolar was very thick, gases wouldn't be able to penetrate. There would be no gaseous exchange there. And then the alveolar is also close, in close association with the transport system. You can see blood vessels are near. Why is that important? So that gases can be transported to and from the gaseous exchange surface, so that gases can be exchanged from the surface of the alveoli to the blood and then from the blood back. Because if these were far, it would take some bit of time for gases to move. Imagine you have got the alveolar here and then the blood vessel is here. It would take more time for gases to move all the way up to here and back. Okay. And then also the alveolars are well ventilated. Ventilation means that they receive enough air, okay, from the outside of the body, and then they remove enough air from the body. Actually, what they are removing is carbon dioxide, and what they are taking in is in oxygen using the nose or the mouth. That is ventilation, the taking in and the removal of air. Okay, so now let's talk about breathing in humans, and that is going to be called respiration. So in humans, we use the respiratory system to be able to breathe. It's a very important system. So you need to know at least some parts of the respiratory system. You are going to have the nose, which is the main one. So the space in the nose, we call it the nasal cavity. You can also breathe using the mouth. The space in the mouth, we call it the buccal cavity. So you can see that these two guys, the opening of the mouth and the opening of the nose will be able to meet. Okay, they'll be able to meet. So this is the one here, this region that you can see here. So in front, we have got what we call the trachea. So the trachea is going to have different parts. So on top, we have got what we call the pharynx. Supposed to have the pharynx here. And then as you go down, you are going to have the larynx. And then when you continue to go down, now you have got the trachea. The trachea has got rings. Okay, you can even touch your neck, you'll be able to feel it. This one. Behind the trachea, we have got the esophagus where food passes. And then as you get to go down the trachea, you are going to have what we call the bronchus. So these two guys, because the trachea is going to turn into two like that. So these two that it forms is known as the bronchus. So remember we started like this, it went and then had to split. So this one and this one, these two are called the bronchus. The bronchus will further split. When they split, what they give are known as the bronchioles or bronchioles, this one. And then at the end of bronchioles, we are going to have alveolus or the air sac, the alveolus. Other important parts of the respiratory system involved in breathing is the diaphragm, this big muscle that is down here, the diaphragm. Also, the ribs are going to be very important in breathing. So all these structures that we are talking about, the bronchus, the bronchioles, are found actually in the lung. So I've got the left lung and the right lung on each side. Okay. So what happens during respiration? So respiration involves inspiration and expiration, breathing in and breathing out. So you need to know what happens to the different muscles. So remember I've talked about the ribs, right? So between ribs, you have got muscles between ribs. So these muscles that you can see. So this is a rib, this is a rib, and between there you have got muscles. We call those as intercostal muscles. So we have got intercostal muscles which are inside, we call them internal intercostal muscles, and then we have got those which are outside, we call them external intercostal muscles. So each one of these will perform a function in breathing. So starting with the diaphragm, when you are breathing in, try to breathe in. You can see that your chest is expanding, right? The diaphragm is contracting during breathing. and then it moves downwards. Take note. Okay, in other words, it becomes straight because normally it is a bit of caved like this. But when you breathe in, that's why the chest is becoming big, because the diaphragm is becoming more straight. It straightens like that. And then what happens to the external intercostal muscles? When you are breathing in, external intercostal muscles also contract. External, the outside, they also contract to pull the chest outwards. But those which are inside, because you are pulling the chest outside, those which are inside, the internal intercostal muscles will relax. How about the rib cage? Look at what happens to the ribs. If you breathe in, try to breathe in. So the ribs are moving out and up. Okay? You can even look at yourself. When you breathe in, the ribs will be able to move up and out. So they become bigger like that. The chest becomes big. What happens to volume of the lungs? Because you are breathing in, the lungs will have a lot of air, so there is increase in volume. How about the pressure in the lungs? There's going to be decrease in the pressure, okay, than the atmospheric pressure. And the thing is, look at this. Here is, let me draw this as the air sac. So in the only way air can move from the atmosphere to the lungs is when because air will flow from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration. So when the pressure of air is high here in the atmosphere and then low in the lungs, what happens is that air will start to move like this. So when you breathe in, it has moved like that. So what happens is that the pressure in the lungs does what? It is low, you can see, all right? It is low than in the atmosphere. That's why air is moving like that. Because if it is low here and it is high here, it means that air will move from the lungs to the atmosphere, and that is breathing out. Okay. And how does air flow? Air will flow into the lungs. It is moving like this, you can see. So this is what happens during expiration. I mean inspiration or inhalation. The opposite will happen when you are breathing out. When you are breathing out, the diaphragm is going to relax and it becomes dome shaped. It now becomes like this because it was straight when you are breathing in. And what happens is that the external intercostals will also relax, but the internal muscles, the internal intercostals are the ones which are contracting so that the chest can become small. Okay. And then the rib cage will also move down. Try to breathe in, breathe out. So when you breathe out, you can see that the ribs come down and they come inwards. The chest becomes small. So the volume of the lungs will also decrease because you have breathed out, and then the pressure in the lungs it will become high because you have to breathe out things. So the pressure has to be high here and low in the atmosphere so that gases move from a region of high concentration to a region of low concentration, and the air is going to be able to flow out, right? The air flows out. So these are the processes that will happen during inspiration and expiration. You need to make sure that you know them. And at rest, normally we are going to have the breathing rate in humans. Normally, it is 12 to 20 breaths per minute. So the way you're breathing, that is like if you breathe in, you breathe out, that is one breath. You breathe in, breathe out, that's two breaths, and just like that. So you're going to have 12 to 20 of them in a minute. Okay. So you have got some terms like tidal volume. So tidal volume is just describing the amount of air that goes into the lungs and goes out of the lungs. And it is 500 mils, 500 milliliters, or 500 cubic centimeters, because the cubic centimeter and the mil is the same. You also have what we call the vital capacity. This is the maximum amount of air breathed out after you forcefully inspire. So think of it. And then now you breathe out maximum that you can breathe out. That is vital capacity, right? And then even when you breathe out, there will still be some amount of air that remain in the lungs, and that is known as the residue volume. The amount of air that remains in the lungs after you breathe out. So this is the one that you can see here. This is described in the terms that we've talked about. So this is the when you are breathing normally, you breathe in, out, in, out, in, out. This is the graph that you can see here. This is known as the tidal volume, the normal amount of air that you breathe in and out, in and out. And then this one, this is known as the total lung capacity, the total amount of air that you can breathe in and out, the total amount of air. Like when you breathe in deep and then you breathe in out forcefully. So the total amount of air that you have to breathe in and breathe out. But even if you breathe out very much, there will still be some amount of air that remain. This is the amount of air that remains even if you forcefully breathe out. So this is known as a residue volume. Okay. And then now you have got this. The amount of air that you forcefully breathe in and breathe out forcefully. And that's the one that we are calling here as the vital capacity. Okay, so those are the volumes which have been shown there. Again, you need to know some the compositions of different gases in the air that you breathe in and the air that you breathe out. So in the air that we breathe in, we are going to have 21% oxygen, 0.03 carbon dioxide, 78% nitrogen. Water vapor changes, okay? But in the air that we breathe out, you don't breathe out too much. So the percentage of oxygen in the air that we breathe out is 16%, carbon dioxide is 4%, nitrogen, everything you breathe in will be everything you breathe out. Okay, 78 is still. Please make sure that you know this. Okay, so breathing, we know that it happens in the alveoli. Okay, this is the one here. You can see ventilation, we had described ventilation as just you are taking in air using the nose or the mouth. So carbon dioxide is moving out of the nose, oxygen is coming in. That is ventilation. And then now we are going to have the gaseous exchange. So carbon dioxide is being brought by red blood cells, and carbon dioxide is going to be removed from the blood into the alveolar so that it goes out. You can see the alveolar is filled with, it has got a film of moisture. And this film of moisture is so that the gases can be able to dissolve there and be able to diffuse. Oxygen, which is coming from the nose, will be now able to move into the blood, right? It moves into the blood and then it is taken to the rest of the body. Okay. So this is what happens during breathing. But there are some things that can affect respiration. For example, cigarette smokes. This one is toxic because cigarette contains the three things: nicotine, tar, and carbon monoxide. And these can cause respiratory diseases like bronchitis, emphysema, and lung cancer. So let's look at some of these diseases. Starting with bronchitis. What is bronchitis? Bronchitis is inflammation. So inflammation is a condition where you have got swelling, you have got pain, redness, okay? Like the place becomes red, the place that has been inflamed, it be paining, it has swelled, it becomes big. So bronchitis is inflammation of the air passage. So where air passes is going to have these characteristics. And tar, that thing that is found in smoke, will immobilize or stop, because in the respiratory system you have got hairs we call cilia, and that is necessary. When you breathe in, let's say, dust, mucus will trap the dust and then you'll be able to remove it using the hairs. The hairs will be able to push them out. okay, which we call cilia. But then tar, which is found in smoke, will make cilia to stop working, and that will cause mucus to increase in the passage of air, and that will give chance to germs which is found in the mucus, okay, to infect the lining of the air passage, and that causes things like coughing. So that is one thing that you see in people with bronchitis. And the overall effect of bronchitis is that there's going to be reduced amount of oxygen reaching the lungs because you have got too much mucus that is blocking the air entering the lungs. Emphysema is a weakening and bursting of the alveoli. Remember, the alveoli was supposed to be normally like this, but then it becomes weak, and then you see it becomes like so. It has, it has broken. Like think of a balloon that has popped. That is what happens in emphysema. So what happens that when it tar, the same thing found in cigarette, reaches the alveolar, it weakens them and irritate them. The irritation causes coughing, which makes the alveolus to be able to burst. Emphysema will reduce the surface area available for oxygen exchange because these guys, like this one, has bursted. So meaning that the blood coming here with carbon dioxide will not be removed because this air sac has bursted. So that will reduce the surface area available for gaseous exchange. Lung cancer is the uncontrolled or abnormal division of cells in the lungs. Smoking can increase lung cancer because tar, which is present in cigarette, is a carcinogen. It is a cancer agent, so it increases cells growing. So abnormal growth of cells is what we call as a cancer. Right? So basically, this is it on the respiratory system.